How are y'all doing today? Man. If that's as good as it gets, we are in trouble. How are we all doing today, honestly? I like the thumbs up. It's just subtle, but it says a lot. Well, that's good. I do want to remind you, after this service, we will gather in the back corner of the sanctuary over here to discuss the topic that was presented today. So if you have any insights or questions that come up and you'd like to ask me those questions or share those insights, I will be back there and invite any of you to join me in that. You can quickly grab a snack next door if you like first. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and jump into this with our words of wisdom, if we can have those up. No, that's not it. Thank you, Heather, though. I appreciate the gumption on the ball. Are we going to get those up? No? Yes? Maybe? Okay. Oh, you guys could all see it. If you stand for nothing, you will fall for anything. Has anyone heard that statement before? I don't know who it's attributed to. Someone in the first service said it's Garth Brooks. I'll accept that. That's fine. He's a cool guy. All right. Well, I want to start with a little experiment, which is going to require your participation, but you don't have to raise your hand, so you can let those nervous jitters go away already. I'm going to put some names on the screen. Then I'm going to invite you just to sit back and sense your reaction to those names, what happens in your body. So here we go. See if you're put off or uncomfortable when you hear these names. Gautama Buddha, Lao Tzu, Bhagavan Krishna, Jesus Christ. Now, raise your hand or just nod your head if you had even a slightly negative reaction to Jesus Christ. A couple people ready to admit that. Well, just go ahead and hold on to that thought for now. Let that sit in your head. 2 weeks ago, I gave a talk about the struggles that Unity is facing as a movement and as a church here in Boulder. And one of those struggles is with identity and how Unity presents itself to the world. After that talk, we invited people to share their feedback with the ministers, myself, and other people, and we had group discussions like we're going to have today. Some people gave feedback by email or approached us in person during the week. And what was fascinating was that one of the things that came up was two completely opposing views. The first one being this: there is too much talk about the Bible, Jesus, church, and people don't want to hear that anymore. The second thing that came up was this church is getting too woo-woo and losing its foundation in the fundamentals of unity, like the Bible, Jesus, and practical Christianity. Do you see the difficult issue we face? So, coming out of this and hearing the feedback, I have been inspired to share a personal story with you today. And it took place back in 2015, shortly after I had just graduated from my ministerial school in Detroit, Michigan. I was just entering my year of internship, which at the end of that year I would then be ordained as a Unity minister. I was also currently at that time the minister of Unity of Las Vegas, and I had been so for almost 3 years at that point. So here I was, this young, excited, fresh minister on the scene, ready to change the world, and I was confident and all those things that come with that sort of situation. But something was horribly wrong beneath the surface. So as I share my spiritual process and thinking at that time with you today, I hope you'll find something in this for you as well. And if you don't, I have no guilt on that. That's your fault, not mine. So for those of you that don't know, most major cities have what's called an interfaith council. Is everyone familiar with an interfaith council? Raise your hand so I know at least our demographic here. All right, so maybe 20% of people know what that is. This is a volunteer group of religious leaders and lay people who come together from all different religions and faiths and non-religions like atheism to discuss topics from their belief and their viewpoint. Usually it's current issues that are happening in the world or just religious topics that we could talk about. And the purpose of this group is to create a more informed public and to dispel any myths or misinformation that is out there about these different faiths or religions. You know how rumors get started. And so it's an open discussion forum so we can ask those questions that we didn't feel comfortable asking in other settings. So a lot of that happens there. And at that time in 2015, I was an active participant in the Interfaith Council of Southern Nevada. This is their mission statement: a world where all faiths, spiritual paths, cultural traditions, and communities cooperate for the benefit of all and are honored, respected, and celebrated. Sounds pretty good, right? That's a noble cause. Well, this group had monthly meetings. And we would get together, those of us who'd show up. It'd be anywhere from 8 to 20 to 30 people that would show up, and the meeting spaces were at the different religious centers throughout town. Would volunteer up one of their spaces for us to meet in, and we'd come together and we'd meet with all the different faiths, and we'd always have a series of 3 or 4 questions we were going to address, and then we'd open up at the end for other comments and questions. And then a couple times a year, they would actually put on something called the Interfaith Forums. These were much larger events in a space probably this size that was full, packed seating. And these were a panel of leaders, a collection of the various religious leaders representing the religions and belief systems in Las Vegas would be up on a panel. And they would speak on specific topics that would be for that particular forum that year. And they might have 1 or 2 forums a year. So I had been regularly attending the monthly meetings, and Erna, my wife, and I would go and attend these larger forums together. And the first one we went to was at the Las Vegas Jewish Synagogue Ner Tamid, which is a beautiful space, and that was a great event. And on that discussion panel that day were leaders from Judaism, from Islam, humanism, from the Sikhs, from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and from Christian Science. The second event we went to, either later that year or the next year, was at the Las Vegas Church of Jesus Christ for Latter-day Saints Temple in Las Vegas, which was a very big, beautiful temple they have there. We weren't allowed in the primary building, if you understand that faith, how that works, but they did have a secondary building that we had the event in, and there was probably 300 or so people at that event. And on that discussion panel that time, it was paganism, Buddhism, humanism, Sikhism, and again, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, since they sponsor that, and Christian Science again. And one of the beautiful things I discovered out of this whole process was that it was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints which was the primary push in most cities to get these interfaith councils established, and actually funded them in many cases and gave them the space to do it. So that's a really beautiful part of their mission, is to get the word about and to share these communities and faiths so we have a better understanding of each other. Now, let me preface what I'm about to say with this. These were powerful, informative, beautiful events and experiences. And let me also say this: I come to events like this with a very different perspective than most people do. And I can probably speak on behalf of Jack and Santish and other ministers in the same way. I'm always looking to expand my awareness when I go to something like this, as well as my community's awareness. And I come from the perspective of a minister, of a spiritual leader, and so I don't necessarily share the same viewpoint as someone that might be sitting next to me there who's just a lay person and doesn't have a ministry of their own. So I'm looking at it in a different way than most people would be. And so here's why I needed to preface with that. Because I came away from each of these 2 large events with the same deep, sickening feeling. It was a very complicated feeling and one that I struggled to try to get in touch with for weeks after each one of these events I attended. Both times it drove Erna absolutely nuts with all the questions I had and all the issues I was facing after the events, so much so that she banned me from any future events until I figured out what was going on inside of me. And the best way I can describe what I was feeling is this. If we can have this up. What is the point of it all? Has anyone ever arrived in their life with this question? That's where I was. And it's an awkward place to be as a newly ordained or about to be ordained minister. This is what I was feeling deep down, and it was very uncomfortable for me. But as I processed and I reflected on it in prayer and meditation, I finally discovered how it was getting triggered in me at these events. So let me explain by going back to the Interfaith Forum, these large events. So there I was, sitting at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints room outside their temple, the extra room they had, listening to each panel member answer this specific question. The question they were given was, how does my religion unfold in my daily life and relation to others? Basically, they're asking, what does your religion look like on a daily basis? Like we hear the concepts of religion, we hear the tenets of religion. What does it look like as you live your average life? That's what they were supposed to explain. And it was a great question that came with a lot of wonderful answers that were very insightful about how, does a Sikh live their average life? How does someone from religious science live differently than anybody else? So it really gave us more of a deeper core understanding of their religion. And the first to answer was from paganism. And she talked about the beauty of paganism and its connection to the earth, its connection to the moon, its connection to the air, its connection to nature and all life. And she was so eloquent and beautiful how she shared that. And now when I heard that, I was so moved that I thought to myself, that sounds like me. I wonder if I'm pagan. Then a woman from Buddhism got to answer the question, and she talked about meditation, and she talked about spiritual discipline and oneness with all life and going within to connect with that Buddha nature. And as I heard that, I thought to myself, wow, that sounds like me. Maybe I'm a Buddhist. Then the humanists spoke, and the humanists shared with us that humanists are atheists, but they believe that there is a goodness that runs through humanity and the human experience. And this gentleman talked about how we can be good serving people without the need of a God or religion. So we should serve other people and serve this planet, and we should make an effort to leave it a better place than we found it. And I thought to myself, that sounds like me. Maybe I'm a humanist. Then a gentleman spoke about what it means to be Sikh, where all religions are respected and there is only this life. They believe there's only this life. And in this life, you must live it to the fullest by putting others first always. Their most important thing is to put others first always. And he said, we must fight for the underprivileged and defend equality and truth in this life. And yes, I thought, that sounds like me. Maybe I'm a Sikh. Then the elder from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints spoke. He focused on the importance of community service and family and dedicated worship and faith and a spiritual structure to help you grow and expand. And I thought, I deeply respect that dedication to family and faith and spiritual structure. Maybe this is me. Finally, the woman from religious science had an opportunity to answer the question. She talked about how religious science actually embraces everything all the other panelists had said. as well as the connection between science and religion as a tool to prove our interconnectedness and our ultimate oneness. She also talked about the benefits of prayer and meditation, spiritual practice, and how we only need the mind to heal the body. And I thought to myself, this sounds a lot like me. This sounds a lot like Unity. Maybe I'm actually religious science. Now let me clarify, this sounds a bit tongue-in-cheek, but as it was happening, I was very serious about what was going on in my consciousness. I was really questioning if maybe I would be a better fit in one of these other religions or faiths. So you may sit here thinking, well, that's not so bad because Unity embraces all paths to truth, so it really is sort of in alignment with the way Unity is anyway. So let's crawl deeper into my mind to better understand my struggle I was going through at that time. As I sat listening to each of the panelists answer the question, I began to imagine myself up there because I thought potentially at some point they could ask me to be a panelist, because that's what they do, is they ask the different leaders that show up at these things to be a panelist. I could easily be a panelist up there. So I was imagining myself there, up there with the panelists, and it was about to be my turn to answer the question. I was getting ready to describe Unity to the audience. My turn comes around, the audience all looks at me, and in my imagination, I watch myself begin to speak. And as I listen to how I would answer that question, I am not proud of what I hear myself say. My response lacks foundation, it lacks clarity, it lacks purpose. I hear myself give a wishy-washy, non-committal response with a bunch of nice-sounding spiritual words that don't mean much of anything to anyone at any time. My answer had no conviction, there was no call to action, and it had no guts behind it. Now, my first reaction to what I heard myself say in my own imagination was, "What are you babbling about?" My second reaction was to say, "You have no right to be on that stage because you don't know who you are, and that doesn't inspire anybody." But the Shad I heard up there was not the Shad I felt inside. I felt grounded, I felt concrete, I felt powerful, I felt clear, I felt decisive, defined about my belief and my understanding of Unity. But the descriptive words I had been given, that I had learned to use in Unity, did not reflect that. Unity is progressive, Unity is spiritual, it's metaphysical, it's holistic, it's inclusive, it's practical, it's applicable. But those are all adjectives describing something. But what is that something we keep describing? They don't say what that something is. There's no noun there ever put at the end of all those descriptive words. Well, we say Unity is new thought. So let me ask you this. Raise your hand here if you know what new thought is and you can define it. I thought so. We had two people in the first service, but if you take away Jack, we only had one. Well, most people assume new thought is the same thing as new age, and they are not. And there's also a lot of other confusion that continues. People often ask Unity ministers and leaders, how is Unity different from Universal Unitarian or Unitarian Universalists you use? How is it different from agape? How is it different from religious science or science of mind or centers for spiritual living? And there is a question that is the question of all questions for Unity leaders, asked time and time again to people all throughout the movement. It's a question that I have been asked as long as I have grown up in this movement from a very young age. It is a question that gets us babbling, dancing, and dodging. Are you Christian? Is Unity Christianity? Well, you can't pin me down. Unity struggles to answer that because Unity has become afraid to associate with Christianity. Likely due to the fact that many people come here fleeing the Bible-based religion of their past, calling themselves recovering Catholics, recovering Baptists, recovering Mormon, recovering Episcopalian, recovering Christian, and on and on and on. The various Christian denominations have left a bad taste in our mouths. So much so that hearing the name Jesus Christ can be off-putting and make us uncomfortable. This has nothing to do with my talk, but occasionally, when I feel a talk's getting too heavy, I put a lemur on the screen. Because there's just something about a lemur's presence that just lightens the room. So just take that in. It's really a deep message about trying to tackle big problems in life. Some of you need more time with that, I guess. Thank you, Farouk, for getting that. So let's do this as another little experiment. Raise your hand if you think Jesus Christ's intention was to have you associate his name and teachings with fear, judgment, closed-mindedness, war, bigotry, racism, hatred, exclusivity, homophobia, guilt, and hypocrisy. Raise your hand if you think that was Jesus Christ's intention. Raise your hand if you think that was the actual message that Jesus Christ taught. Of course, it was not, and no one raised their hand. But that shows the horrible injustice that has happened through 2,000 years of limited human ego-driven, power-hungry, closed-minded individuals twisting and distorting the deeply powerful and transformative message of this amazing, enlightened being. The Guru Yogananda had this to say: Jesus was crucified once, but his teachings are crucified daily at the hands of ignorant misinterpretations. A horrible injustice has occurred to a soul that deserves nothing but the highest admiration, reverence, and respect. Jesus was a spiritual activist who started a spiritual movement, but yet we wound up with this. All these offshoots of Christianity, Eastern Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Anglican, Protestant, we've got Greek Orthodox, Alexandrian, we've got Lutheran, we've got Methodist, and on and on and on and on and on. All claiming they are the one true religion of the Bible, and by and large teaching the polar opposite of the actual message in the Bible. What was the original intent of Jesus and those around him who struggled to preserve the Christ message by writing them down in what became known as the Bible? What was it that many of them suffered incredible hardship and even lost their lives for, trying to preserve and protect so that 2,000 years later they would still exist so that we could learn and grow from them? That is the question that inspired our Unity co-founders Charles and Myrtle Fillmore to create this movement. And that is the question that I discovered I was battling with at the core of my being in 2015. What is my purpose as a Unity minister? What is the purpose of Unity as a whole? In consistent, dedicated, focused prayer and meditation, I demanded my answer from the universe because I was hurting. And after weeks of working on it, my answer finally came like a bolt of lightning. I am a Christian the way Christ intended them to be. Unity is Christianity as Christ intended it to be. And lo and behold, this is the same realization that our Unity co-founders Charles and Myrtle Fillmore came to in the late 1800s. They discovered that Christianity had completely missed the mark and missed the point. And the Fillmores knew very clearly the purpose of unity, and they were not afraid to stand behind it. This is Charles Fillmore. Unity is a link in the great educational movement inaugurated by Jesus Christ. Our object is to discern the truth of Christianity and prove it. The truth we teach is not new. Neither do we claim special revelations or discovery of new religious principles. Our purpose is to help and teach mankind to use and prove the eternal truth taught by the Master. That is very clear and unapologetic. Because unity's lack of clarity is only a recent problem, stemming, as I see it, primarily from a fear of offending those who have an issue with Christianity and the Bible. And that is not to say that there are not very relevant and real reasons to be put off by what Christianity and the name Jesus have become. But these are issues that we need to work out and resolve. Trying to avoid, suppress, ignore an issue like this does not heal it. Am I wrong? The Fillmores did not give up on the idea of Jesus and Christianity just because others had spent thousands of years dirtying it up. No, they set about to right the wrong, to heal the injustice, to clear his name of all the garbage and baggage that had been attached to it. Christianity became a noun for the religion about Jesus. But the original Christ intention, as we see it, was to start a movement of action, people studying and applying the Christ teachings in their own lives today to experience the results of such today. A movement that teaches us all how to come into our own Christ nature, just as Jesus did in his life. Jesus is not the way, Jesus is the way shower. A master teacher, a guide, exceptional, but not the exception. Now, unity has always and will always respect and embrace and support and encourage and celebrate the truth that God can be found in all religions through all spiritual paths. But that does not mean that unity is just a collection or a conglomerate of all these other religions and paths. Unity does stand for something on its own. And unity does have an identity, and it has a path. I had a dark night of the soul in 2015, but after a profound insight, I came to my realization and a clearly defined purpose. I have been ordained in unity, ordained by the Fillmores to carry on their mission, in spite of what's trendy in the modern society. I stand here today as one who has been called to fix the errors of our past and clear the name of one of the most beautiful human beings that has ever stepped foot on this planet. I am not ashamed to say that I am a Christian, and unity is Christianity. And I am a Christian the way Christ intended us to be. And unity is Christianity the way Christ intended it to be. Part of my job is to take back the proper definition of these two words, back to their original intent. And I know it will bother some people. And I know it may not be easy, but oftentimes a true calling isn't. And that is the truth as I experience it.